I love mountains. I love the challenge of climbing them, hiking through them, of being in them, and at the top, beholding the view of creation. There is nothing like it. I also love how mountains help keep me grounded in perspective. They call me to pay attention and demand that I be humble and I be ready. I carry 10 essentials with me whenever I'm in the mountains. Mountains are also a symbol of God for me, a sign of being rooted and grounded in God's spirit of love. Mountains are for me that anchor point of life to be authentic with God and authentic with myself and others as well. Well, today's gospel leads us to the mountain of Tabor, the mountain of transfiguration, up in the Galilee region here in this map. Jesus has a mountaintop experience up here that moves him so profoundly that his direction is sent and then moves to Jerusalem. His experience of that mountaintop and how he lived and taught and preached in love happened here in this region. The mountain of Tabor is the mountain of perspective and insight for Jesus, and he leads 3 of his disciples to this high mountain where he is transfigured. Jesus experiences a divine insight into who he is, Son of God. And there's Peter, James, and John to witness it all. For Jesus, the moment of insight becomes clear. For the disciples, they're caught up in the moment, and they want to capture that moment by saying, hey, let's just stay here, build 3 tents, have a great time, maybe put out a kiosk, invite people to come up here. Let's just stay here. This is great. What they also experience is that they hear the voice of God clearly say, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him." Listen. How do we hear the voice of God today in our lives? And with what clarity of heart do we listen? In that mountaintop experience, a spirit and cloud overshadowed the disciples and Jesus when they heard the voice of God. How do we trust the Spirit overshadows us in our lives? And in what ways do we trust that God calls each of us the beloved? That God says to us, even today, we are the beloved of God. God says, look, beloved, pay attention, beloved, change, beloved, listen, beloved. The mountain of transfiguration for Jesus and the disciples becomes the mountain of change. That mountain of perspective and insight becomes the mountain of resurrection. And the mystery is that journey to this mountain of resurrection goes through the mountain of dying and rising, and goes through the mountain of dying and the cross in Jerusalem before getting to that mountain of resurrection. This season of Lent reminds us that discipleship is not a cakewalk. It's not a guaranteed joy and everything's hunky-dory for the rest of our lives. That mountaintop experience is not a one and forever. It is this life cycle of the mountaintop leading us into the valley, the trenches of humanity, and walking in suffering and enduring life and across and going back to that mountaintop again. Discipleship is not a cakewalk, but it is a challenge to live life wholeheartedly, all of it. I say to my friends, the good, the bad, and the ugly, all of it. Now, the cost of discipleship is that we set our hearts and our vision toward Jerusalem with that great hope in the resurrection. And that is the mystery of our faith. And in order to do that, in order to live that mystery, we need mountains. We need a mountaintop experience to have that perspective of the bigger picture. We need to have that mountaintop experience of God's vision of love. We need mountain moments in order to see clearly who we are as the beloved. And we need mountains to inspire us and encourage us, strengthen us to walk, especially in those times in the deepest valleys and trenches of humanity, when we can barely see the road ahead of us and we have no idea where we're going. We need mountains to remind us to listen at the level of our hearts and pay attention to God, a God who calls us beloved today. So this week, let us be mindful how this season of Lent will be a mountaintop moment for us and challenge us to give our all to God. Hold nothing back, because God is with us and for us. God has our back. God walks with us always and in all things. God's love has no limits, no boundaries, and no borders. God's love propels us forward. God's love is in our very DNA, empowering us with the energy and the endurance to climb the mountains and the valleys through all of life's journey. Let us walk this valley, this mountain, this challenge today, trusting in the love of God as the beloved of God. Amen.